Recording in progress.
Anyway, so welcome. I think everybody knows Robin and Eric. You can raise your hand or say something if you don't.
Hi there.
But
Hey, everybody.
I'm Robin.
yeah, nobody knows who you are. But no. But I would like to give each of you a minute or two if you want to introduce yourself, tell us where to find you, what you do, and all that good stuff. And let's start with Robin.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I'm a mentor. I'm an artist. I'm a gardener. That's what I was out doing this morning before this meeting. Yeah, I'm one of these people that really gives a damn about everybody's artist journey. All right. I started a long time ago with this thought in my mind that everybody deserves the creativity they feel. And there shouldn't be any stops. It shouldn't be based on, I don't have the education. I have no wherewithal. I have nobody around me to help me out. It should never be based on that. And so this has been my drive since, long before Google Plus. And yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to have the opportunity to be a judge in the scavenger hunt and to see your works, to watch you grow. It's amazing because I remember you from 5 years ago, or how long has it been? Has it been 10 years that we've been doing this? I remember you, and I've watched your progress, and it is a thrill to me. It is a thrill to me. So yay. Okay. Next.
And we're honored to have you with us for so long too.
Oh,
Yeah.
You're...
Yeah. That's such a big influence on all of us, Robin. Thank you.
Yes.
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 And yeah. And I'm Eric. I think most of you know me too. So I'm both a photographer and a software engineer. I mean, I've been software engineer now for 30 years. And very early in my career, I made the choice: do I go the photo route or do I go the engineering route? At that point, I made an internship with a photographer in Lausanne, in Switzerland. And that's when I decided I go the engineering route, because I saw that he was doing photography, but he was not doing what he loves doing. He was doing what he needed to do for making money, right? And that's years later, I realized that the drive is exactly the same, right? With a photo, you create something from scratch. I mean, that's kind of conceptual photos. With software, you create a solution from scratch, and then other people will use your software, but you're judged by your peers. In software, when the way you solve the problem is the creative part. That's very similar to photography. But then you're judged by your peers who are up to speed, who know how to judge you. And you're not judged by your customer. Whereas in photo, what happens is you create something, and then if you make it for the money, you happen to be judged by people who may like it or who may not like it. And it's maybe really good work, but it's just good for you, which made me happy to make that choice. But now the drive is so similar for both that I really love both. And yeah, Robin, you were saying 10 years. So it's funny because 10 years ago, the hunt number 5, I had a photo of my daughter who was 8 at the time. And all these 10 years, gosh, I've grown so much. I've seen all of you grow so much. I've seen my daughter grow so much that this last hunt, she both helped me create the images and then help me judge. So when we go back to judging, I'll talk a bit of what it takes to judge with 2 people together. And so happy about that whole journey. And seeing you all here with moving faces, so wonderful. Welcome, everybody.
Eric, will you tell the story? It's very brief, about when you were first in my mentoring program on Google Plus.
Which one was it? When I asked.
We were at a little counter on the subject of, are you an artist or not? Do you remember?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's great. Okay, forget it. Because that means you are an artist and you already think of it and it doesn't have to come from any place else.
Oh, was it because I said that as an artist, you needed to come from inside?
No, this was long before that. You were actually like, I don't believe that a photographer is an artist. I don't believe that this, anyway, it's not important. It's not important.
Okay.
But here's the thing, is the viewpoint can change. Even if you're just taking shots now,
Yep.
Just continue, keep going.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And I know, like, one of our most popular questions I think that we get both in the community and just direct messages is, how do you judge? And like before, like on Google Plus, there was always the game because we knew who the judges were ahead of time, and there's always the jokes about, sending Nutella or chocolate or whatever. So we've kind of switched it up so we don't always know who the judges are till after submissions. And we've also gone, I think, a little more outside the normal community that we had before too. Not necessarily to thwart the bribing and everything, but just to make it just to make it different and expose people to new artists too. And I know you shared that great video, Eric, that except I speak maybe 3 words of French, but
Oh, it went behind.
but I still got it. I mean, I could still
Yeah.
see, even though I didn't understand the exact words,
Yeah.
but I could still see the emotion and I know everybody looks at it from a different angle, which is also what's so fascinating is,
Yeah.
you have 4 judges and sometimes they're all in sync and sometimes it's a completely different set of winners for each album. And if each of you can answer, what do you look at first? Is it, does the image grab you, or do you look at the quality of the image or how it speaks to whatever the category is? Maybe if you each want to dive into how you approach that.
Who first?
Okay. For me, it's really does it grab me? It's right because at first you see a blob of 100 over photos and you go up and down and you don't know, what is it. So the way we approached it, I would again, both, yeah, you've seen both my daughter and me sitting there. We'd both go individually, select, hey, what does this makes it? So the big list of everything that either grabs it or is technically correct, or that has one of the attributes that we're looking for. And that makes the first pass. And then we discuss all of these images. And as you've seen in the video, we argument about that. And that's what I found the most interesting is you hear the perspective from another person of, hey, something that this other person sees in that photo, you may not see it. And some of the images that made it in our top 3, I mean, some were not my choice and were my daughter's choice, and she made her argument. And I found it so interesting to have to make the argument to another person as opposed to have just to make it to yourself, to convince yourself, yeah, that photo deserves it. That helps you open your eyes and see other things that you haven't seen before. So for me, the first is does the image grab my attention? And then you look at, okay, is there a surprise? Is there something that I didn't expect? Is the technical to me comes second, right? Because if the concept is there, if the great idea is there, then the camera never matters, right? Yeah, the image has to be well composed and well formed, but is it blurry by mistake? I don't care. Is it blurry intentionally? I mean, do you have the blur at the wrong place? Yeah, that's bad. That's just not using the tools that you have at hand. So for me, it's judging, do you use the tools that you have to express your idea? And that's why I believe that does the image grab your attention? That counts a lot. What is the meaning behind the image?
Very good. It's awesome. So for me, every time I do my bonus reveals, and you guys all know what that is, right? That I post an album of everything that are my first picks, and in that collection is essentially saying this is a good photograph, and I can only fill 8 spots. And so the key things I always write down what my list of the kinds of things that I'm looking for. But the key things that I want to say is have it be your own art. Don't shoot a picture of somebody else's art.
Yep.
And we are talking literally about just shooting a little wooden character that was a cutout that somebody did, and it's in a shop somewhere. And you say, oh, that'll work perfectly for blah 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 word, and you click it, and that's all you do with it. Do something else with it. Create a zoom blur. If you're limited in terms of what you're doing, create a vignette. Do something with it, so it is at least to some degree derivative, and it's not someone else's art that you've just shot. So if you're going to this incredible sculpture that is in your city, and you go and you just shoot it straight on, that's somebody else's art. But if you come at it from an angle that a passerby, like the sculptor never intended that somebody get underneath the darn thing, then now you're talking about creative, and you're looking at it from a different perspective than the artist intended, and those kinds of things to me are acceptable. The other thing is using words a lot, and using words, writing words down into, and if I have to read those words to understand the meaning of your image, you didn't go far enough. So find a way to tell the story. This is photography. So find a way to tell the story that is without the words. So the words can be there, but if I can see it, if I just totally blur out those words, squint my eyes or something like that, then, and I still see the stuff inside the image, and the story is still there inside the image, then I find, that's good. I will usually take off the table anything that's got just words in it, and the words have to tell the story of the image. The other thing is try to tell a story. And a lot of times, we can have images that were totally blurry, maybe off kilter, maybe there's 4 or 5 things in the image that really, don't need to be there. But if you've told a story, and I'm really seeing that story in the image, or you make me laugh, those are definitely things that go into my first picks thing. After that, I'm looking for technical, because, again, it's a photography contest, and I'm looking for out of the box thinking. So maybe not always the first idea that you have about the word, like a literal translation. Maybe that's not the best. Maybe think of another way it can be used and try and find some way to convey it that way. Oftentimes, those end up in my honorable mentions, simply because somebody went so far off the, off the beaten trail, and no one else thought of that idea. Then I'll go, dang, that was super clever. That was super clever, and I love that. Anyway, rest of my judging criteria are in my bonus posts, so check those out. And you can probably go to past hunt groups and whatnot to find those. All right.
Well, that is one thing too I remember from your mentorships, Robin, is the story, the story, the story, the story, and the story.
It's the very first thing when you do my art basics. It's the very first thing, because it encompasses everything. Story. Yeah. What are you trying to say? Oh, I can give you this hint. Art is nothing more than a communication. And it really depends on what you're trying to say. And so the hardest thing that most artists have to deal with is, what do you have to say? Do you really know what you want to say? And it could be something simple like, please pass the salt. Or it could be something more complex like, I think, therefore I am. And that is the quality of the art. If it's please pass the salt, well, okay, everybody can kind of agree to that idea. They really, they can get behind it. I think therefore I am is something that's going to grab a viewer if you can get that into a photograph. Okay, so yeah, push.
Well, and I think that's why I love the emotion words too in the rounds we've done.
Yeah,
because I think the people that do get them done really well. And yeah, they're harder. I mean, it's especially depending on the emotion, it can be really hard to convey an emotion, especially if you're not using a human subject in your photo. But when they come through, it's, even if, it could be like you said, the blurry 10-year-old cell phone shot, but if you get that right, it's still a brilliant photograph, and it'll get you. And
even the regular words, I mean, one line of thought that I've always had is, how can I convey the idea without showing the object, right? Every time I have an object in theme, it doesn't always work, but occasionally it's an interesting line of thought. So how can I pass the idea just without showing anything of that's in the wood? And that leads you off to tangents, to other ideas in the concept. Sometimes it works and often it doesn't. And then I still end up showing the object. So yeah, as Robin says.
One of the ones that makes me think of for that is the word was kiss a long time ago, and it was just shoes that were shown, but it was a male pair of shoes in front, and then facing them were women's shoes up on tiptoe.
Yep. Yep.
And that's it. But you understood that was for a kiss.
Yep. Same thing in this one. I mean, in one image that struck me in this round was Laurie's with the teal, right? Of putting the tea bags vertically and with the horizontal L. And I looked at this image black and white, and I went right away, got it. My daughter was there and she didn't get it. And then when it came to these eyes that came up, wow, yes. Yeah, same thing is, how can you take a different angle of the art of the wood or even the emotion that you see?
Yeah, and I love the ones too that make me think a second.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, how does that fit that? And then, like you said, it's like, oh, and yeah, I love those because, and there's always somebody in every single album that thinks of a twist that, or a different meaning of the word, or some other context, and I love those. And
Totally.
I often wonder, I sometimes struggle just picking an album cover because there's usually, for every single album, there's probably 20 I could easily make the album cover for.
Yep.
And I'm sometimes not sure if it's worse having to pick one or having to pick was it 7 or 8 images, because it's tough. And I have a little bit different criteria for the album cover because I really want it to be something graphic that will pull someone in on social media, because that's where most people are going to see it. So it needs to be something that someone just flipping through Twitter or Facebook will stop and actually take a look at. But it's hard, and everybody, I guess, like Robin said too, everybody's gotten better, which makes me happy too. I like seeing people get better and push themselves.
Yep.
So then what is more important then, creativity or technique? Robin.
I will say creativity is the most important thing, because with creativity, you got the wheels spinning all the time. You're more apt to come up with technique as you go along, or you will search it. How will I do this? So if you have ideas spinning through your brain and they excite you, and that's kind of important, and they excite you, you're more apt to seek out that information. If you slavishly go along watching tutorial after tutorial and trying the things out and you can actually get creative that way. You can actually spawn creativity that way, because you'll get ideas as you're working on technique, but it's much slower. So in fact, most of the things that I've learned in Photoshop have only to do with my creativity, my willingness to go, what the hell, give this a try. And I force myself to find technique. So I think that is a big driver.
Eric.
You said exactly what I wanted to say. I mean, exactly. I totally agree. And if you don't have the technique you learn, if you don't have the creativity, regardless how much technique you are, you're stuck. You're pretty much at a dead end. So I think it's not about watching more videos or more learning. I watch these as well as a lot, right? And it's usually it's always, how do I watch with intent. I know what I want to learn, because I need to do things in photos, and then I figure out how to do it. So I think it's really, if there's anything that if you have empty time or you don't have things, don't go watch technical tutorials, is go read a book. I mean, it is, how do you foster creativity? And it has nothing to do with photography, right? It is, let yourself free to think, to invent, to create. And it can be a walk in the park, it can be reading a book, it can be watching a movie, going to museum. It's anything that works for you to get new ideas. Talking with other people, I mean, talking about the list with your family, or getting your ideas challenged. And any one of these triggers creativity.
And let go of your fear.
Totally.
Let go of that possibility that you could be embarrassed by something that you do. Let go, let it go. This life is way too short.
Yep.
It really is. It all goes by so quickly. Just let go of the fear and dive in and say, what the heck? What the heck?
Like,
I
what is the worst that can happen? Nothing,
Yeah.
right? That's it. If you start looking at consequences, what is it? Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and if somebody comes in and they say, ew, that's an awful piece of work. If they do something really, really critical, that says more about them than it does about you.
Yeah,
You know, give yourself the
totally.
back pats, right?
And for one such person, you have 10 others that go, wow, that, oh, I never, yeah, exactly.
So now that we have this creative idea that we've looked up techniques to do, what is the most important thing to keep in mind when doing a composite?
You go first, Eric. Yeah.
Okay, so I think when you do composites, what's important is to shoot with intent, right? I've seen several composites in regularly where you just take one image, you take the other, you slam them together, right? And I think that's not how you start. You start with the creativity, you have an idea, and then you express, how do I do that? Can I do it in one shot? And obviously, no, you can't always. So then you think, what images do I need to shoot in order to make my composite? And that is what I mean by you composite with intent, as opposed to, oh, just I found a stock image, I found stock or in my own images, and I slam them together. And that is when you start thinking this way, you get the shadows right, because obviously with the composite, you have the first frame and you need shadows in the second. You get the blur right because the distance is the same. You get all these little subtle things of the color cast of the background coming on the foreground image. That is a very hard one to get. And mentally, your eye can tell immediately, oh, something is fake in that composite. And it's extremely hard to, when you have the editing tools, to figure out what is it, because your brain is so good. Your brain, it's subjective, that your brain knows how, oh, that's a composite. You can instantly detect it. But it's so hard to nail, what is it in this cut and paste that is wrong? What do I need to fix with this cut and paste to get it right? And I think it's when you do these, you shoot composites with the background and then your your foreground with intent, that you realize what is it that makes this composite realistic. And that takes time. That is a lot of experiment and practice. And I think Robin can tell because she's done so many well done composites. Now I'm curious what she has to say to that.
Well, you just said everything I was going to say.
There you go.
It'll be a short show.
So there are a couple of key things that I'm always looking for in a composite. One, did you get the lighting match? And I've seen, okay, this is really funny, but I've seen pictures where the light is fully, you can tell, right? There's a shadow coming from the head onto the person, and behind them is a gorgeous sunset. You're getting where I'm coming from, okay? So think with your lighting. And as Eric says, and I love that you brought this point up, because I know a lot of people, they take this from this folder and that from that, or when they're just doing compositing in general. We're not talking about the hunt, but they'll go and they'll grab something off the internet because they're like, that's perfect, that's just what I want. They don't think with that lighting match. Okay, so I'm looking at this thing and I'm, somebody's composited it and I'm going, okay, but it's a great idea, but, all right. The second thing is story, of course. Like, what do you want to communicate? And I keep driving this point home. What do you want to say? And that's going to be the biggest thing. So by all means, just dive in and composite stuff together. Just do it. Just throw things together. And you think of it like storyboarding for a film, okay? Think of it just like getting your ideas across, all right? That's your practice time. But when you think about something like, if you really want to excel, now you're going to think about story. And then I'm going to give you what I think is like the key element for compositing, and it's a little tip, all right? Eric already mentioned it, but that is color match. And you can mess up a whole lot of compositing. You can mess up practically everything. You didn't get your mask right. You didn't get the lighting right. You didn't get the scale right, the perspective, the camera angle. I'm giving you all of my tips on compositing here. The camera angles, the lens, none of it matched. But if you pull all of that together with a color, and everything is cohesive as a color, you're going to win more with that color alone. All right. So you can also do it with black and white. All right. So you can kind of get rid of all the color. Okay. So you make a cohesive idea with the color itself. So here's one of my tips. You've got your background. It's this gorgeous forest scene, and you want to composite your kid into it and the dog. All right. Take that background, do an average blur or just a blur on it. You're going to make a copy of it, drop it over your cutout of your kid and dog, and then set it to color. And then start dragging that opacity down until you can start to see some variations in their coloring. So in other words, you're not going to lose completely. And that's going to help a lot. All right. That's my one little tip. But color is like your key element in terms of composites.
Yeah.
So, Eric, there was a question for you. What do you generally shoot first, the background or the foreground / subject?
It really either. It really doesn't matter. I think I sketch my idea first, and then sometimes for some of the past shoot, I've shot all of my backgrounds first because I had the setup. I mean, because I create something, and sometimes the foreground. It doesn't really matter. I think if in your idea you know what you want to do with your foreground and your background, to me it doesn't matter, and you can always color correct one or the other after the fact. So I don't have a really one way of shooting. Sometimes oftentimes I have a person in the foreground. So in that case, it's easier I would shoot the background first to be able to show the image. And then we can practice the poses in the foreground and then kind of mentally put that in front of the background. So that helps because then I have a real image rather than just a sketch for the foreground person. Yeah.
Okay. So this is my question. What would be a pet peeve or something that you see happen a lot in photos that you wish people didn't do or would fix or whatever?
Hold your camera without moving it. Get that, nail that focus. Unless you're doing ICM, intentional camera motion, figure it out. Figure out how to do it, and don't submit until you've nailed that focus. Okay, so I have problems seeing. So it's something where I have to put on a second pair of glasses, look at my view screen because I shoot with the eye piece. So I have to, look at the view screen and see if I've gotten it sharp. Zoom in, okay? Take that time and get it sharp. Eric?
I can hear Alan's
it's like the pet peeve would be what I would think an unfinished photo, right? I think same thing if it's out of focus, but even beyond. I mean, a composite that's half done where some things are really obvious. Give it another try, iterate. And I think the whole thing in the Scavenger is not about, oh, I found an image, I got it, it's done, right? Is iterate. If you create conceptual images, then do it again and again and again, and submit. At one point, you could submit fewer photos, but we spend the time because that's how you learn. It's by trying more. It's not by creating a lot and just submitting the first thing. I think it's try more, and that's for conceptual images. For real life images is wait and right. If you do the reportage and the found image, stay there more, find the right place, try different angles. If it's a moving subject, wait for other people to, get a couple of shots. We have different people in front of this. I think put the effort in because that's how you iterate. I think that I have another thing I wanted to talk about and maybe get Robin's opinion on that is series, right? I see a lot of people doing series. I've done my own set of a series, right? And at one point, Robin, you said that series, you're not really fond of series, and And now I think I realize why. I'm not sure. I mean, right now it's very hard when you create a series of images to appeal to all the judges, because of course you'll have some bad photos. But I think series are a really great thing to do because it pushes your creativity, it pushes you to take a theme and push it to the extreme. And it's really once you think you've exhausted all the possibilities of a series that you have, oh, I have 2-3 more words to fill it. That is when all of a sudden you get this breakthrough idea. Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. And it's that I love that tension between in the creativity between, oh, I have no more ideas, and you push yourself, and that's how you explore the subjects. And personally, over the past 10 years or so, I've moved more to doing series. And that's why sometimes I'm not in every single scavenger hunt, because I have a big theme that I want to do with hundreds of images where I'm pushing myself to the limit of what are all the things I can do. And I think that's really powerful too in the scavenger hunts. If you challenge yourself to do a series, you're really pushing that to the extreme. It doesn't pay well with the judges. I can see that, but I think it's a mental exercise that's very interesting.
It's so interesting that you brought that up, Eric, because in my private mentoring group, we just had a whole thing of share your hunt pack, share all of them in one post, and we as a group, we're all going to give feedback, but I kind of waited for everybody else to give feedback first. And I think, gosh, was it? No, not all of them. Okay, but several of them had done series. So the first thing that I told them is when I'm judging the images in the hunt itself, I do not like judge the whole series. I do not look at it in that way. So I'm going to judge each image as a singular image when I get to it in the fuller album. But I agree with you, Eric, that doing a series does push you. It kind of forces you. So this is a double-edged sword, because on one side it's pushing you, it's driving you, and on the other side it's setting you up for a kind of failure. Because if you don't give yourself enough time, if you plan to do a series, start it as the minute you get the list. Go. Do everything easy that you think you can get done first, because that's going to speed up your momentum, right? And give yourself enough time, because what I see often happening is people go through this and they just don't have anything for those last 3 words, and they've only got 1 day left, and so they just throw something in just to have something, and that really, it kind of does a number on your psyche, because you're like, this is crap, but I'm going to submit it anyway. Okay, don't submit crap. Don't submit anything that you in your heart are not going, this is freaking awesome. Right? That's how you should feel about an image when you're done with it. And this is one of the things that I always tell my peeps, if you can't stop staring at it, it's done. If you just cannot stop staring, just looking at it and just enjoying everything, filling yourself with the memories of creating it, et cetera, okay? But don't just snap something to have your series. If you need to, do 7 images that are a series and 3 others that are something else. Because I'm not judging for a series. I'm absolutely not judging for a series. But to the degree that it pushes you. Okay, so I don't know if you guys know Rick Baker. He's one of the folks in my group. So we judged his, and he did it all black and white. All right, that was his thing. He was gonna, and this guy is not a black and white artist. All right, he is color. Oh my gosh, some of them go crazy. It's awesome as color things. So he decided to do black and white. And so what do you do when you get to the color word? There's always a color word in every hunt, right? And so it was teal for this last one. And what do you do? Right? Do you guys, any of you remember what he did for his teal? He went ahead. You go ahead, Elizabeth.
Was he the one that did the sign language?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And
awesome.
for me, okay, so I'm looking at the constraint that he put it on himself in terms of the black and white. And I got to that one and I was like, dang, so clever, really, really clever. And I say, I don't like words, But if somebody is just showing something like that, you know, it's a visual, visceral thing, you know, it's not something I really had to read. I could tell off the bat that this is what he was doing, even though I don't know all the ASL actual signs for letters. Okay. So, okay. So that's what I'm saying. So you have that two-sided coin of doing a series can really drive you and push you and push you and push you. And the other side is if you don't give yourself enough time to do it, then you may end up with a few losses. Don't just submit. Go ahead and submit half your series or whatever, because we aren't looking, we're going through a whole album. We're not looking at your entire series. We're not judging you on that. So if you want to use a series to push yourself, yay, that's a great idea. Okay. For my, I don't know, one hunt thing, it was all about fancy. It was all about, you know, this crazy storiness. So, if you want to do a series, go for it. All right. But we're not looking at that. Okay. So use it to push yourself, but please don't get yourself into that mode where you're, okay, I'm just going to shoot something. Don't do that to yourself.
And I think as viewers, series are fun too. Like, you know, Mayan did a great series with everything in a frame. And then I linked Eric's, the anniversary round with the alphabet, where he did everything as the
flying up,
you know, and use that. Like, so when I agree, when they're well done, and you keep, and as a viewer, when you keep waiting for that next album to come out because you want to see what this person did next, I mean, it is fun, but yeah, it doesn't necessarily affect your judging one way or the other if they're doing a series.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved your square elevated or jumping objects. That was fun. It's like, even me, when I was going through, I'm like, what is he gonna do in this one? Like, how on earth can he do matches? Oh, that's how he did matches. You know?
Yeah, and it can be technical, right? I mean, I mean, in my case, it was a technical thing that I want to exploit to no end, right? 20 all letters, but it can also be a theme. I mean, I as you said, I like Mayan series here because, I mean, the frame, some images, it's just adding a frame, but some he really used that splatter of ink on the frame of the frame, right? On the border. That's when you start using the series to advantage, right? And I think it's because you create several images that these ideas come. Or it can be in styling, can be black and white. There's so many things you can theme. It's just marvelous.
Well, in the board games too, and I'm totally drawing a blank, so someone remembers her name, please add it. But she did the series where everything was involving different board games.
Yep.
And I was like, half of me was like, okay, what's she gonna do next? Because I want to go play that game. But it was also really, there was some really creative, not just taking a picture of a board game photos too. And that was really interesting to see.
It was Isabel.
Yes, thank you. I was like trying to go through the photos and try and finding them. I was running out of time. So do we have any other questions in the chat? I didn't see any.
Come on, people.
I don't see any in the chat right now.
Okay, well, we can move on to the quick critiques if you want. We have 3 different people submitted photos. And I'm going to share my screen so the people watching can see as well. The first one is Tiny by Piotr, if I'm saying your name right. Can everybody see?
Yep.
Piotr.
So let's see, who did we leave off with? Eric, I think, was last. So let's start with Robin.
Yeah, I think it's awesome, Piotr. I actually really loved a lot of your stuff this round. It was fantastic. So I'm like, love bugs anyway. Okay. When I was young, I wanted to be an entomologist. Okay. So I just dig bugs. What I love about this particular aspect is the storytelling of the little lost one that's up. All right. And so if you look at it in terms of a art basic sense, you've got your highest value there, and highest value attracts your eye. And so this little one is sitting right up in that spot. And then everybody down here is, what are they, enjoying a meal or trying to move a leaf? I can't really see it large on my screen, but the composition, the general colors that are slightly muted, but there's just enough color to add some energy to the image. This kind of S, composition. It's an excellent image. Yeah. Eric?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I like that isolation. I like the light. The light from the back, I think, adds a lot. The fact that I see this little reflection of we can't really show anything on the image here, but at the bottom left, you have this little patch of brightness, and then a big patch of brightness that totally isolates this lone ant on the top. Yeah, really great image. Yep, that's it. Nothing, nothing else to add to what Robin has said already.
Okay. No, I like it too. And the next one I have is Fairy Tale by Diane McGuire. And to my share screen, get that one up. And okay, let's start with Eric this time, since you didn't have anything to add.
So that to me is one example where the composite doesn't really work blend. I think the idea is great, right? I mean, the idea of the wolf looking from behind, the concept is absolutely there. I love the storytelling in Little Red Riding Hood walking in front. But the shadows, that's one example where the shadows are just mismatched. I mean, I see the shadow of the girl on the left, so very hard light, but the library in the back is more, it's a more diffuse lights, because probably you have a lot of lights on top on the ceiling. So I'm missing the shadows of the wolf on the table and the shadow of the person either against the book or on the table as well. And the colors don't really match. It's more saturated color on her. The background is more in the yellow warm tones and muted colors. So I think, as Robin said before, a common color theme would work much better on this image. And then I kind of expect a reflection of her on the table as well, right? I can see the rim of the book, the vertical part of the book that is reflecting on the table. So I would also expect some reflection on the table. So it's not an easy image to get right. I mean, that has a lot of techniques that is needed to get that composite right, but more practice there, I would say.
Yeah, honestly, I can't add anything more to that. It's really about the lighting. It's about getting that lighting right. And Eric, you've already said the main things. Like, there is like zero shadow for the Red Robin Hood and the wolf. And if you look at the lighting on the wolf, it's kind of coming from the left. The lighting on the girl is coming from the right. So really just take a look at those things. If you have an idea, I would say shoot your background. Shoot your background first, all right? Or shoot your elements first, all right? One or the other. So the elements that you're going to add, you can control that to some degree, and you can say, okay, I already know. If you're shooting the background first, I already know what that lighting is like in that background. And so you can create a setup for those things. So for example, something like the wolf, maybe you don't have an opportunity. Maybe you caught it, out in the woods behind your house, and it was the first time you ever shot a wolf, and it's never going to happen again. All right. So you use his lighting, that element that you can't find anymore. You use their lighting as the basis for the rest of your composite. All right. So you might have been able to pull that off if you shot the background library scene from a slightly different angle, so that you could, get the two. And don't forget, you can flip elements, right? So if, the lighting is in the background is coming from the right-hand side, and you could only catch that wolf, with the lighting on the left, you can flip your wolf, but you have to think with all the rest of the elements that you're doing. All right. Yeah, that's all. Ooh, can you both give tips for fixing the edge of items in composites? That's from Sandy. The edges that you're talking about, the mask, Sandy? Yeah? All right. So I have a whole thing in my mentoring group on creating masks. All right, so I have a full arsenal of all of the stuff that I use. Okay, but if you're just getting like a basic mask, you're using that what is that Instamask tool in Photoshop? Not Magic Wand. What's the other one called? Brain not working.
Lasso?
What's that?
Lasso?
No. The one that you just kind of draw around the element and it kind of collects
Oh,
the all the inside and okay. Anyway,
definitely.
Yeah.
there. It doesn't matter what the name of it is. So you just want to create a mask that way. There is, I mean, we're talking about in Photoshop, there's of course select and mask, which gives you that opportunity to kind of refine it. But here's the thing, the main tip that I want to give you, and I think Eric can definitely remember this part: reference, reference, reference. All right. If you want to know what an edge looks like in a photograph, zoom in 100, 200, 400% and really study it. And we're talking about 10, 50, 100 images where you're looking at how do edges combine in a photograph. That is going to give you more ideas on how to do it than anything else. Keep looking, keep looking, keep looking. Figure out how, what is that supposed to look like? So typically in a photograph, what will happen is you'll get a kind of a little fuzzy, and we're talking pixel level, right? A little fuzziness about, when two elements are in a real photograph. There's not going to be this hard edge. It's never going to be a hard edge. So once you've got that hard edge mask, typically what I'll do is I'll go ahead and select my element that I already have. So I've already cut it out. And I will go to select and select border. And what you want to do is get like 1 or 2 pixels, maybe 3 or 4. It really depends on the resolution of the image that you're working with and what you want to present later, if you want to present a high resolution image. And then just go through and you can blur that a tiny bit. There's several different tools, and I can't really give you all of that here in the context of this tiny hangout, but you get the idea. You just want to merge your fake background with the added element, all right, so that you just get this little bit of connection between the two. And those kinds of things will keep me from seeing that it's a composite. If you've got your lighting okay, if you've got, the color okay, you've got all these other things okay, but I see that sharp edge, I'm like, let's connect these elements together a little bit more. Okay. Sure.
We actually have one more quick one. This one is from Heather. And this one just makes me laugh. It's so much fun.
It is very fun.
And let's see, let's start with Eric again.
Yeah, so a lot of fun. So I see this is one of the hardest subjects to put together. I mean, water, extremely hard. Transparent things like the glass or the edge of the inflatable seat, very, very hard. And I've struggled with anything that involves water. So I would say that setting you up for failure, it is picking the absolute hardest subject that you could composite together and trying to get it right, because getting the edge of water and transparency is just so hard. So for me, one advice how I would have shot that is in 2 phases. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about the light that is very, very hard light on the front end and soft light on the back. But my advice here is shoot that into 2 pieces. Shoot one where you put the inflatable seat in a real body of water just by itself, and aim your angle and just take a photo of that. So you have a photo of the background with inflatable seat, and then take a second with yourself sitting on the seat in a garden in some other space. So what then happens at compositing is when you put these 2 images together, you can kind of blur the boundary of the seat, of the inflatable seat, and you'll have water, you'll have a wet seat instead of a dry seat, and you can then pick. You have more, it's not a hard line between what is foreground and what is background. Then when you composite, you have a choice of which area of the intersection you pick from the background and from foreground. So if you're in that situation where you can create a composite where the same object is in both of your layers, it makes your whole life a lot easier for compositing, especially a subject as hard as that one.
Awesome. Really, really, really good tips, Eric. So my particular one, since you've already putting these two things together, and by the way, Heather, your stuff has just been getting better and better and better. So, take all of this with a grain of salt. You're fantastic, and I love your ideas. When you have something and you're trying to put an element into a scene, and you have something that is, what's the word, movable, right? Water splashes coming up over, just splashing up over the plastic thing or over your boots, can do a lot to kind of help sell the idea. I see this a lot when people put things on top of a grass, and they may, have decided to go ahead and put a shadow there, but there's no grass sitting up over the top of the shoes or the element that's been composited in. And so what you need to do is you need to get in there at that zoom level. And I always tell them, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, because you're going to start to see things that you don't see. Grab a few pieces of that grass and put it over a shoe so that it's just coming up over. These kinds of things are going to sell that element is more in the scene, particularly when you have movable things like, the water here. And the other thing I would say is watch out for extraneous colors. So I look at you, and you're wearing the maroon and pink and the turquoise, and actually kind of love that. It makes us go right directly to you. And then there's this patch of bright screaming green. Well, it's not really screaming, but it practically screams to me inside the floaty. And it just doesn't need to be there. Okay. So go around, fine tooth comb when you feel like you're done, and just start looking at it. One of the things that you can do is squint your eyes. And this is an old painter's trick. Yeah. You just squint your eyes and say, what stands out the most? Well, for this particular image, it's that water, because it's high value, but you're looking around, and this green, it just doesn't belong there. I thought it was grass actually at one point. So really, kind of scrutinize it that way with your little squinty eyes, and my favorite thing to do is make a copy of it in a layer, and then just take that layer and flip it around horizontally, vertically, or 180 it, whatever changes your viewpoint, and then take a look at it again. And every single time you're going to go, it doesn't look right, because you're going to get used to this particular view that you've been working on for the last 6 hours. All right. You need to flip it. You need to flip it several times during the whole time that you're putting it together. And you keep evaluating what sticks out. And pretty much most of the time, it's going to be able to tell you what is not working with that particular image. Oh, and zoom in. Did I say that?
Yeah. I've also found zooming out helps sometimes too.
Oh yeah, look at it in thumbnail.
No, or go walk 10 feet to the back of the room or something.
Yeah. Just, you can just zoom out until it's like really, really tiny, and you'll just kind of look at it as a thumbnail, and you go, okay, is it balanced? Is there too much going on one side? And I would say with that particular image, you've got most of what's going on way over to the left side. So the image itself was kind of, out of balance a little bit, which is not a liability for that particular image, because the whole thing is, you're like out of balance. Oh my gosh, what's happening? So it was okay for that particular image, but flipping and doing all those kinds of things, or looking at it really tiny view thumbnail, as Elizabeth suggests, is a really great way to change your viewpoint on it, and change your viewpoint as much as you possibly can while you're working on it.
Well, we're actually almost out of time. It's 11:55 already. So it's actually
really good.
Somehow we managed the time right. I don't really know how that worked, but
this was crazy good fun.
This was really good.
So yeah, and thank you very much, Robin and Eric, for joining us and taking even more time to come out. And hopefully we can do this again after round 32, which we're excited. The list is coming out. Is it tomorrow?
Monday.
Monday. So yeah, if you haven't signed up, make sure you sign up, and it will be another super fun round.
Yep.
And
Has been such a pleasure. Good luck, everyone.
well, all right. Well, I'm gonna stop the recording.